Hello, hello. Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are excited to get started. Bill in Boston, you win. You are first, but we've got Maryland in the house, Tallahassee, Sausalito, Sacramento. Hey, hey, hey from Lisa. We see ya.
Beaumont, Texas, Spring City, Pennsylvania, Watsonville, California, Philadelphia, South Pasadena, Mesa.
Thing, St. Paul, North Plains. Aloha from Honolulu. Hey, Tim.
Yes. Let's see. Gotta go. Now we're going faster. Seattle, Pennsylvania's 10th district, Casa Grande, Arizona. A lot of Arizona in the house today. That's great. Love to
There's
see it.
always a lot of
Always a
Arizona.
lot of
The
Arizona in the
Indivisible
house.
movement in
Yeah.
Arizona is just super strong.
Poolsville, Maryland, Arlington, Virginia, Vermont. Let's see. Brookline, Massachusetts, Livonia, Michigan. Belleville area, Friends Indivisible. Decatur, Georgia.
Cater or Decatur? Decatur. That
Decatur,
makes
yeah.
more sense. Dallas, Vista, Huntersville, Boston, Albany. Albany. Y'all, we got a big what's the plan? Should we get started, Leah?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, we're gonna get started. For everybody who's brand new here, welcome. It is great to have you. I was just hearing from the team. We are gonna have more Indivisible groups form in September of 2025 than have formed in any month since May. Y'all are just surprising me. It's incredible. We keep on saying this is a wave moment, and this wave moment has lasted for 10 months, and people continue to join. So, welcome. We should introduce ourselves. Yeah.
Like offer a historical footnote on
Yeah.
it because I think it's actually really interesting. So 2017, right? Indivisible got started. Huge wave, huge formation of grassroots pop-up groups, Indivisible groups all over the country. About 90% of the groups that were active throughout the entire Trump 1.0 term, they had formed by like February of
Yeah,
that
that's right.
year.
That's
so
right.
there was a massive surge of people forming groups. But what we're seeing this time around is a steady, like a big surge and then a steady build. And that is really exciting because I think it speaks to how we're actually growing in ways that are totally unprecedented that we didn't even see in the first Trump term.
Leah, you want to scoot up near the mic?
Sure.
Okay, Leah's
Get the feedback. I get the
I
feedback.
yell, and then Leah speaks like a normal human being, and so the mic can't figure us both out. So I should talk more normal, and you should talk as you normally do, but closer. Okay, we're gonna get into it. Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Ezra.
I'm Leah.
We're actually introducing ourselves now. We're the co-executive directors of Indivisible. We're here for What's the Plan?
We're married. It's always important to add that for
We are married. This is why we are very close to each other right here. Somehow 8 years into Indivisible, and we remain indivisible. It is great to be here with all of y'all. Uh, the point of these calls is to talk about how we organize together to save our democracy, what we can actually do. The reason why we called it What's the Plan is because we want to talk with you about how we do the things. Yes, we all like to consume political media. It makes us feel connected to the world. It makes us feel like we can place ourselves on the right side of history, but consuming politics is not our goal. Politics is what we do. We have a bias towards action, so we want to talk about what in the world is happening and then what do we do about it. Leah, do you want to talk about the logistics of this call and why we're here and how it operates?
Yeah, I'll do. So you are joining What's the Plan, where we talk about what the plan is. This is going to be mostly Q&A. We'll do an opening monologue, but the bulk of the time is going to be Q&A submitted live. So if you've got a question, go to the bottom toolbar and put it in via that Q&A function. If you want to upvote the questions, we're going to answer mostly from the top. We'll do a little variation to make sure we're getting some variety in there, but mostly from the top. So upvote the questions you want to see with that little thumbs up button. If you wanna do that. If you are from an Indivisible group, we always love it if you just let us know at the start of your question. And so we can try to intersperse some that are directly from practitioners all around the country. This will be recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who registered. So do not worry. You can watch it over and over and over again. We will post links in the chat. Those will also go out in the follow-up email. So if you are missing some of the links because the chat is moving too fast, it has happened. You will get those in the follow-up email. Do not panic. Finally, just a note on respect in the chat box. This is a space that covers a lot. It covers the looming authoritarian threat. It covers enormously painful and hard topics that are incredibly personal for people who are on this call. We ask that folks keep the chat constructive and supportive and respectful. We are a diverse nationwide movement. We treat each other with respect. That is foundational to our ability to organize together and in solidarity with each other.
That is right. And the way that we organize together primarily is through local indivisible groups, of which there are somewhere between 2,200 and 2,400 current active local indivisible groups all over the country. I say this every week, and that's because it remains true, which is we have between 5 to 10 new indivisible groups joining every single day. Every single day, a group of people come together and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe, name it. Trump just decided to try to fire Jimmy Kimmel, or Trump is driving us into shutdown, or Trump is coming after our health care, or these Republicans are invading and occupying American cities. Something causes some folks to lift their heads up and say, well, I got to do something. And what they decided to do is bring together a few friends, family members, colleagues, strangers to start organizing in their community. And that's how we build power. That is how we build power. And so I do like to start these out by celebrating the brand new leaders of the indivisible movement. We limit ourselves to 10 every week. I'm sorry for the other folks who aren't getting mentioned, but if you want to shout out, talk to your local organizer and have them reach out to me. I would love to shout out what y'all are doing. But please welcome with your emojis, with your chats. We need to grow as a movement, and these folks are building up where they are. Marsha with Borrego Indivisibles in Borrego Springs, California. Ginger in Longmont with Longmont Indivisible in Longmont, Colorado. Check out these emojis, y'all. Y'all got to feel that love, right? Eileen with Indivisible Wilton Manors in Wilton Manors, Florida. And with Randolph Resistance / Indivisible in Randolph, Massachusetts. Stacy, Indivisible Clarkston Persisters, Clarkston, Michigan. Jay with Indivisible Brookings, Oregon, in, you guessed it, Brookings, Oregon. Gary in Cibolo Creek, Indivisible. This is Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, outside of San Antonio. Kelsey with Moab Indivisible in Utah. We got 2 indivisible groups in Utah this week, brand new. Maria with Southern Utah County Indivisible in Spanish Fork, Utah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. 10th, rounding us out, Walworth County Indivisible in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. But I get to cheat, Leah, because we got another international one. I don't believe in the history of Indivisible we have ever had an indivisible group in Iceland. But welcome, Kalere. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, correct me later. But Indivisible Iceland is in Reykjavik. Welcome to the fight for democracy. Looking forward to seeing No Kings Iceland, or is it going to be No Tyrants Iceland? We'll see. We'll see. We look forward to seeing the event. I do want to call out the team. I talked to them about new groups. We don't get a ton of high school groups. In fact, it's pretty rare that there are indivisible groups forming in high schools. We do get college groups. We certainly get college town groups. But I want to call out Angel. Angel with 3 Arrows MHS. This is in Monroe, Connecticut. Just formed their indivisible group in Connecticut, and it's described as a club at Massauk High School looking to empower young people to participate in advocacy, spread tolerance and information, debate, and fundraise. Awesome! How great is that? That is so cool. Leah, do you want to give an update on the big immediate thing that we were all talking about?
Yeah, let's talk about No Kings, y'all. Okay, so there are, as I speak, 1,655 events on the No Kings map. You can check it out. It is a beautiful tapestry of the country. We have got No Kings events from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia to Berkeley, California. Just to give like a little bit of historical context, I'm the stats and data person today, apparently, but the single biggest national mobilization, same day mobilization was called for by like national entities in the Trump 1.0 years was the Families Belong Together mobilizations in 2018, celebrating or opposing family separation. I'm talking as loud as I can. I don't know how to help. So those were
That was
about
better.
750 events all over the country. So that's 750 in 2018. Hands off this year, 1,300. No Kings, 2,200. At this stage in the process for the last No Kings, we were sitting at around 1,000 events at this time. So we are already almost 700 events higher than we were at that point. So this movement, just can't underscore this enough. We are organizing at a scale and a size and a reach across the country that is literally unprecedented. And obviously it's not just Indivisible. We are doing that together with our partners. We are part of an incredible, big, bold, powerful coalition. I want to shout out friends from American Federation of Teachers, 5051, ACLU, the Transformative Justice Coalition, United We Dream, Move On, Public Citizen. There's a bunch of people who are doing incredible work to make this happen, but we're all really aligned. The best way that we protect the right to peaceful protest right now is we make our peaceful protest, we go in together, we make it enormous, undeniable, unavoidable, overwhelming, irresistible. We're going to make it big and joyful and powerful, and we are going to invite in the entire pro-democracy movement. So shout out to everybody who is organizing one of those right now. If you are not organizing one, figure out if you can help, sign up, RSVP. let us know where you're going to be and give us more ideas for how we make this as big as we can.
And we need about, what, 500 events more to beat what we had on No Kings in June, which was then the largest protest in modern American history. We're on track, y'all. We're on track. So like Leah said, this doesn't happen just because you see some talking heads talking about it. This happens because we all do our part. So please go check out nokings.org, find your local event. If it's not there, start pulling one together. That's how we do this. That's how we do this. Leah, should we talk about something that we won?
Yeah, let's talk.
It is hard in fascism to go day to day and look at everything the regime is doing to attack us, to attack our communities, to attack our democracy. Like that's something we're all going through and we're all seeing this day to day. And no victory that we have is going to be permanent and everything. We're not going to wake up on after some incredible tactic and say, we just saved democracy, it's over. And so we should always be feeling there's a new goal that we are trying to achieve. There's something more we can do because there is something more we can do. And I feel that. I feel that all the time. And so I have to push myself to say, but wait, we just did something big. We just did something big. And actually, we need to celebrate that because the fascists, they don't want us celebrating it. They don't want us acknowledging that, wait a minute, we just scored a big win. They tried to do something and we stopped them. They will either say, nah, we didn't care about that at all. It wasn't a big deal. Or they'll say, that wasn't even a win. We were always going to do that. That's how they try to depress you. That's how they try to make you feel like you are powerless. We're not going to let those bastards make us feel like we're powerless. We are not going to take wins in stride. We are going to soak up the win. We are going to allow those wins to fuel our future wins. So I want to focus everybody on how we just kicked the regime's ass when they tried to go after Disney and shut down Jimmy Kimmel. We did that. We did that. And it didn't come out of nowhere. It did not come out of nowhere, y'all. That there's a good piece by Adam Serwer in The Atlantic, brilliant writer. If you don't know him, it's really great. Recommend checking him out. But this piece in particular is really good, talking about the failures of elites this year, and specifically how cowardly they have been, how much they have been buckling under pressure. Not even buckling under pressure, but buckling under the hint of possible future pressure. They immediately roll over. And we've been talking about these capitulators all year. Paul Weiss Law Firm, Columbia University, Bezos and Zuckerberg and Washington Post, CBS News. We've been seeing with our own eyes. This isn't just political leaders. These are folks leading law firms and media institutions and universities who supposedly 5 years ago were writing books on leadership and courage, and now can't roll over fast enough. And that's really dangerous for democracy. It's vastly different from what we saw in Trump 1, when there were a lot of institutions saying this isn't normal and democracy dies in the darkness and we're going to stand up against it. That's not what we saw this year. And so coming out of No Kings 1, we focused in on this 1 million rising training. We trained, what, 350,000 or so people on strategic non-cooperation, not just focused on Congress, not just focused on the administration or even state legislatures, not on the political space, but instead on these pillars of support for democracy, these places that should be standing up to pressure from the regime, but might not. And in fact, we were seeing we're not standing up. And this was out of a recognition that, look, while Congress and elected officials, they play a role, no doubt. We need leadership there. It's the collapse of non-political institutions and their leaders that is both a threat and a huge opportunity. And it's an opportunity for two reasons. One, many of these capitulators, many of these leaders, they're just not used to public pressure. The way that an elected official is used to getting calls or getting protested at town hall, they don't normally find themselves in the limelight. And so that makes many of them more vulnerable to public pressure if it's well organized. And the second reason why it's a big opportunity is, look, y'all, most of the time, most people aren't paying attention to politics. It's a niche interest. Most people tune it out entirely. But they do pay attention to Marvel. They do pay attention to Disney. They do pay attention to late night comedians. They do pay attention to these institutions that exist, quote unquote, outside of the political system. And if we're going to build a big pro-democracy movement, we can't just be organizing among the folks who are political addicts. We've got to reach people who don't exist inside that bubble. So this is what we did. And I want to really learn from this because it should fuel our future wins. There are a few things that made this particular moment different. I want to call out. One, there was a clear connection between the regime's threat and the capitulation. So when Carr came out and said, basically they were going to go after Disney and ABC if they didn't take Kimmel off the air. That was even more blatant than other threats that we've seen earlier. And then immediately we saw the capitulation. Within what, hours, Leah? Not more than a day or two, we saw Disney and ABC moving in response to that pressure. The second thing that made this really effective, this target, Disney, was reachable via immediate feedback mechanisms. We were able to cancel subscriptions. We were able to show up at local stations. I want to call out Indivisible groups who literally within hours of this news were out in Burbank, we're out in New York, we're at Disney, we're at ABC affiliates, showing up in public. And that helped make the point that, hey, we can actually fight back against this. Normal everyday people are showing up. Being able to reach that target, we should keep that in mind for future fights. Third thing was that immediate grassroots pressure. This pressure just started amplifying all over the country, not just Indivisible. Very proud of Indivisibles who were showing up, but it became global. People started canceling, people started posting, people started showing up. And it was grassroots, but it was bigger than grassroots too. This was cool. So we were on the forefront, all of us who were individually doing this work, but elites were seeing this as well. Former Disney CEO, fellow comedians, celebrities, they saw people rising up, and you know what they thought? They thought, wow, if they're standing up, maybe this is a safe place for me to stand up too. What do we call that, Leah? I think we call that courage being contagious. Courage was contagious in this moment. That is what happened. And so the result is this stunning reversal. Kimmel is back on the air. He's not pulling his punches. Disney is licking his wounds. Other media organizations are watching from the sidelines. They see this, and now they have to factor it in to how they respond to future threats. Look, again, I don't want to act as if the fight's over. We won. Everybody go home. Big shout out to Indivisible Seattle. I was talking to them earlier today, and they've got a Suck It Sinclair campaign going on Seattle to pressure Sinclair and also Nexstar. And I know other Indivisible groups and others are ramping up those pressure campaigns. We're hearing some reporting that Nexstar is in negotiations to get Kimmel back on the air. Great. That's what we want to see. So fight's not over, but gosh, y'all, what a victory. What a clear, indisputable victory over the regime. The authoritarians, look, they want you to believe that they are all powerful, that you are alone. It ain't true. It's just not true. We just showed it. The regime is not all powerful. We're not all alone. The regime wanted to force Disney into capitulation. Disney was open to it. People organized, and we turned the tide together. That's it. And in the Adam Storer piece, he ends with the quote, I loved it. The people, it turns out, are far more courageous than their leaders. That's true. That is true. That is what we've seen for the last 10 months. It is true, and it's also enough. If we organize, that is enough, because the leaders won't lead. They will follow us when we organize. And so then I actually want to end on the Mark Ruffalo quote, because he helped kick off the launch for No Kings last week, and he had this just really struck me. Great quote. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave, but in order to be free, we've got to be brave. Taking that with me. Okay, Leah, that's what I got. Should we move on to Q&A?
Let's do Q&A.
Okay, y'all, moving on to Q&A. First question, top voted, is from Kim with 600 votes. Robert Rice shared yesterday that after the last week, his sixth sense is telling him that the tide is now turning on Trump. Heather Cox Richardson shared similar sentiments. Do you agree with them, or do you have a different take on how things are going?
Oh, goodness. I want to give a multi-layered answer to that question. I think we've gained a lot of momentum, and I think in a specific way, which is that frankly, part of what's happened with kind of elites and the elite feedback loop is they've got an impression that Donald Trump is more popular, has more support, has more legitimacy to do the things that he is doing than regular people do. Donald Trump has been unpopular for quite a while. He is, people, if you ask people, do you think it's going in the right direction? He is underwater on basically every issue, and particularly on the economy, underwater dramatically, right? So there is a disconnect between the overall level of capitulation that's kind of self-reinforcing among these circles and where large numbers of people actually are. And what happened in this situation is Disney simply misread the moment, right? Disney is an example of a company that's it's not trying to make a political statement. It's trying to make the most money it can make. And its read was everybody's kind of going in this direction. It's going to be better for us if we collectively capitulate on this too. Let's just keep it moving. Turned out they misread the moment. Turned out they were caught out when they were on the other side of this with a bunch of their talent, of their consumers, of their popular base in a way that really exposed them to enormous challenge. And they had to walk it back really fast. And I think what that highlights is this process of organizing to create for people who are making these decisions the understanding that Donald Trump's power is much more fragile than it appears, that his base is not as big as he would like to make it appear, that he is, he has the ability to do some things and he does not have the ability to do a bunch of the things that he is threatening. So I think, yes, there's definitely like a momentum shift in our direction. I do want to put this in the context of kind of the back and forth that we've been experiencing, right? There have been a series of expansions of authoritarian power and threat over the last couple of months, right? The deployment of the American Guard to national cities, the overall ways in which they are attempting to weaponize the assassination of Charlie Kirk in order to crack down on dissent and public opposition. And this was an example of that, right? Like they went after Jimmy Kimmel from that frame and there was big public pushback. I want to like get everyone used to the idea that there's going to be some times when it feels like we've got the momentum, and there's going to be some times in the future when it feels like they've got the momentum. And a lot of this is just a matter of us continuing to smartly and effectively organize, seize opportunities when we can to push, and also like hold people up during the moments when it does not feel like we are winning, because we will have more of those.
Indeed, indeed. Great question, Kim. Ernie's got a question. Leah, I think you might be good to answer this one too. Any ideas about why Hegseth summoned around 800 senior military officers without telling them the topic or the purpose of the meeting? Could it be a purge of the generals and admirals not considered loyal enough to Trump? This scares me to death. For folks who aren't paying attention, this isn't something that's been going on for a long time. The news just broke just now, maybe an hour or two before we got on this call. But Leah, as between us, the foreign policy expert, as I am not that, any thoughts on what this could mean?
I really don't know. I guess what I would say is
Somebody said red wedding.
no. So here's what I'd say. I do not think like we have email, we have phones. If you're gonna remove people from their roles, you don't actually have to summon them in person to do it. And so I would be, like, look, this guy's like an alcoholic, abusive wackadoodle, and he could go in, he could do a lot of different things. And I don't think that we on this call are capable of imagining how many both sinister and ridiculous things this could mean. I think we just got to get more information, totally honestly.
I think it says something about the current moment that when you said this guy is an alcoholic, abusive wackadoodle, I was like, who are we talking about again?
Yeah, like
There's
every
just like,
single member.
yeah, just be a little bit more specific. Oh, right, it's Hegseth. Okay, that one. Yep.
Yeah.
So we will be watching it closely, and if there are productive action items or if there's some interpretation of events that we can offer, we will.
Yeah.
Amy asks, do you think Schumer will finally stand strong on the CR bill this time, or once again talk tough and then cave instead of using the leverage he has to fight back? Great question, Amy. I feel like, Leah, I answer this question every time, and maybe you want to give your flavor of an answer here.
Yeah, I just took a couple. You are welcome to go for it. This is your topic.
Here's what I will say, y'all. We are engaged in what's known as an inside-outside strategy. An inside-outside strategy depends on everybody doing their part. You've got, in an ideal world, folks on the inside who are telling you, here's where I can get my folks together, and here's where we're going to make a stand. And then you've got folks on the outside who are providing air support, who are pushing back against their opponents in Congress and pushing them to hold strong. And so we've got to play our role here. I think folks know on this call, we have not been shy about criticizing Democratic leadership in Congress and Schumer specifically. We were very disappointed when he surrendered on the last Republican funding bill. And I think because of the blowback Schumer got for his surrender back then, we are seeing more of a spine. Now, I like talk and inspirational speeches as much as the next guy, but we actually need to watch and see what they do. And what we should be watching to see that they do is that they don't cut some last minute deal with the Republicans to kick the can down the road by a few weeks or a few months. And certainly no last minute deal that provides Democrats a fig leaf, something they can say we got, but then gives Republicans everything they wanted. But right now, what I will say is the Democratic position is, in broad terms, what we were asking for, which is clear demands, a line in the sand, and a commitment not to capitulate. A month ago, on these calls, we were criticizing Dem leadership for not having any demands. Our demand of them was to tell us what their demands were. They have said that. They said they want permanent extension of the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies. They want Medicaid restored, and they want an end to these rescission and impoundment shenanigans that are allowing Trump to do whatever the hell he wants with the budget. Is that everything? Absolutely not. There are 1,000 things you could ask for, but is that real? Hell yeah, it is real. And you know why we know it's real? Because the Republicans literally say they're not coming back to Congress, and Trump canceled a meeting with Schumer and Jeffries over this because of those demands. So I think it is our role right now to back the play. This is the play. We are backing it. And up until the play changes, I'm 100% on board. Democrats should stand strong behind these demands. Do not give an inch. Do not listen to the threats that are coming from the regime. Screw that, whatever. They're going to say what they're going to say. We are fighting for something that is simple, easy to explain, and wildly popular. And if the Republicans want to shut down the government in order to close more rural hospitals and make Americans' health insurance premiums go up, fine. They can do that. That's in their. I think it's stupid. I think it's harmful. I think it's politically dangerous for them, but that's the Republicans' choice. And by holding firm and unifying Democrats around this, we force that decision on the Republicans. So I reserve the right to change the position when the conditions on the ground change. But right now, my recommendation is cheer on the Dems for holding strong for the next several days. If we go into shutdown because Republicans refuse to deal, our role is to back up the Dems and say, hold strong, do not capitulate. We're with you. And it's not just us, but the cavalry's coming in on October 18th. We're going to have millions of people in the streets, and they're going to be putting pressure on Republicans and backing up Democrats for fighting back. Leah, anything else?
Got it.
Okay.
Great.
You take this one. This regime is using the term Antifa to demonize those in the left. I foresee the Antifa label being used to justify adverse treatments and even jailing U.S. citizens who oppose this regime. What advice does Indivisible have to protect protesters and keep us safe while fighting against fascism?
Yeah. Let me come at this from kind of like global and then focus in on the specifics. So we all know like a core part of the authoritarian playbook is you claim powers that you don't have, and you make demands that you don't actually have the ability to fulfill, and threats that you don't have the ability to fulfill, and you see if people push back. And if they don't push back, then functionally you've got that power. Functionally, you can fulfill that threat, right? That's what they've been doing with elites this whole time. They say, he says, give me $16 million or else I'm going to sue you. ABC has plenty of grounds to withstand that lawsuit, but they give him the money and bam, now he has that power to extort money, right? So in this situation, and when we're looking at kind of the threats to free speech and dissent, we've got to understand this as both like genuine real risks and also an intentional strategy to kind of chill dissent, scatter people before and prevent them from organizing before they can get started. I want to like give a specific example of what they're trying to do here and how it's kind of how it can play out. That's not this one, and then I'm going to circle to the specifics. So folks may remember earlier this year, Donald Trump came after Act Blue, instructed the Justice Department to investigate them, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole idea here was not that they actually had remotely like any grounds whatsoever for doing that. It was that they could incite panic. People would freak out. Organizations would pull their accounts out of Act Blue and like move somewhere else. People might not give money on Act Blue. The whole idea was as much to derail the democratic funding infrastructure as it was the actual formal threats that they were making through the Department of Justice. And Act Blue correctly was like, no, we're doing completely legitimate and normal stuff, and we're going to keep doing it.
Yep.
And we in the infrastructure were like, this is completely normal. We are going to continue to pursue our normal operations, and we're exercising our First Amendment rights, and we're going to keep doing that. And we averted the kind of like bank run dynamic of people panicking,
Yep.
going for the
Yep.
exits, trying not to, like disassembling our own power preemptively. And I think that's a really important example to hold as we talk about what is happening right now, because they are claiming powers they don't have. Now, when we talk about that EO that went out, our friends in kind of like the more legal and democracy spaces have been really clear that while it's certainly incredibly threatening, there's just not very much legal force to any of it, right? And our overall orientation in this moment is the way that we are going to protect our rights, the way that we're going to protect our First Amendment rights, the way that we're going to protect our right to peaceful protest is to continue to engage. It is to concede nothing to them in advance. It is to say, we have these rights, we're going to keep using them, and you are going to have to actually challenge us if you want to, if that's what you're going to do. That is actually the way in which we protect our rights the best. Now, I will give like a couple of more tactical things, which is that I think it's really, really important. We're really clear that we are a nonviolent and peaceful movement, and we are clear about that from a moral perspective. We are clear about that from a strategic perspective. I think this is a moment when it's really important to be clear up front, and it's important to set the tone for that in all of your actions, right? We want to be joyful. We want to be supportive. We want to be inclusive. We want to be family friendly in the things that we are doing. We're trying to bring people in and create spaces that build big, broad support, and also, make sure that there is no plausible grounds for kind of the repressive tactics that we know they're very eager to inflict. And so, that's stuff like if somebody seems like they're being sketchy at your event and doing stuff that's like intended, we know there are some people who like go out from the right wing as provocateurs and try to say something to get other people in trouble. If you see something about that, say something, talk to your event organizers, right? So like there's stuff around kind of your actual operations and just being careful and intentional about how you organize, how you set the tone. If you're doing a No Kings event, participate in all of our safety and de-escalation training, just a little plug there. But fundamentally, the way we're going to protect our rights is we're going to use them.
That's right. They can't crack down on all of us.
Or we're going to be big enough that they can't crack down on
That's
us.
exactly right. Yeah. Eric asks, Trump is old and not healthy. When autocratic leaders die, there is an opening for challenging power structures. Vance is uncharismatic and unappealing, so it is not clear he can take over the reins. Are there any plans to prepare for such an event? I think I should say, just like from the outset, I don't agree with Donald Trump on anything politically, and I desperately hope that he is healthy through the end of his administration, whenever that may come. It does not benefit democracy for anything to happen to him. I think that creates a power vacuum, and it would create uncertainty. And we shouldn't be wishing that the end of this is biological events intervene or anything else happens. We win, democracy wins, when we successfully organize the people against the fascists and throw them out overwhelmingly. And we have opportunities to do that through the electoral process this November, during the primary season, and in the midterms, and then afterwards. That is my goal for a win. And so beyond that, are there yeah, I mean, we've got Vance, who gives like a bad name to dweebs. I'd call him a dweeb, but he's just kind of a weirdo. He doesn't have the juice. Come on, everybody knows he doesn't have the juice. He can't keep any coalition together. So in 2028, when he is running for the presidential nomination, the knives are going to come out for him in the Republican Party. Ted Cruz and all the other wackos on the right wing who want to become president are going to suddenly go after JD Vance. I don't think he keeps the MAGA coalition together. And also, y'all, can I be honest? My head is not in 2028. That is not where I am. My head isn't even in November of 2026 right now. We are in mode of fighting for the life of this democracy. We are trying to organize the largest protests in American history in 3 weeks. We are trying to push back against election sabotage and subversion as we head into the midterms. That's what we have control of. And I know there are a lot of interesting hypotheticals out there, and hopefully we get at some point to engage in them. But right now, we're fighting to live to fight another day.
Right. There's a lot of opportunities to play three-dimensional chess, and we generally encourage everyone to play checkers right now. Let's build big, bold, beautiful opposition movement. That's what we're doing.
That's a good quote. We should put that on bumper sticker. Checkers, not chess. Indivisible. Okay.
Bumper cards.
Yeah, bumper cards.
Bumper cards, not chess.
Okay. Cheryl asked, should you or local chapters organize a boycott of Sinclair and or their advertisers? And do you have any plans if Trump attempts to shut down Indivisible? Great question, Cheryl. I mentioned a little bit earlier about the pressure on Sinclair and Nexstar that's going on. So Indivisible Seattle is one of many groups. It's not just them. And it's not just Indivisible who are organizing. Let me name a couple tricky things about pressuring Sinclair specifically. Sinclair is a propaganda arm of the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. Like, that's why they exist. Disney was not that. Disney is not that. Disney has kind of...
It's cross-pressurable.
It's cross-pressurable. They've kind of got they've got like Democratic centristy kind of leadership. They are susceptible to pressure from grassroots and the public broadly. Sinclair would love us to just loves to fight us, loves to push back against grassroots pressure. And there are some exceptions to that, especially where there are Sinclair stations in blue states or in blue areas that are operating, where the leaders and the participants in their programming might not like the pressure. I think that's a really good campaign because you might not get national Sinclair leadership to suddenly wake up that they shouldn't be supporting fascism, but you could do local pressure. This is why I've been calling out Seattle a couple times. I think in about 20% of the audience share, there is like it's Sinclair and Nexstar are blocking Kimmel. We should be identifying where we can put good pressure, and then absolutely. So we're supportive of that right now. I would advise people identify, is this a real leverage point? Can we achieve something by applying pressure, and then go for it? And Leah, do you want to take the second part? What happens if Trump tries to shut down Indivisible?
Well, I think that's my previous answer, right? Which is that Trump makes a lot of threats to a lot of people, and the fastest way to lose is to treat that threat as a legitimate thing versus continuing to insist upon your rights and hold your ground and say what we do is we organize peaceful dissent against this authoritarian, like would-be authoritarian regime. And so, fundamentally, that's what we are here for. That is what we are going to keep doing.
Can I just say, what does it even mean? Shut
Yeah.
down Indivisible? Look, there is Indivisible National, which is an organization.
That's right.
Like they like that, but shut down. Look, if he comes at a nonprofit organization, you know what people are going to do on October 18th? They're going to show up. If he doesn't shut us down, people are going to show up. There's some idea that like if you or I are taken by the administration, suddenly Indivisible evaporates. We're not the leader of this thing. The leaders of Indivisible are all over the country and they're going full steam ahead. You can't shut down people power, not in a democratic society. Ain't going to happen. So they're absolutely going to try to mess with us and other opponents. They're already doing that. But here's what I would recommend. You're the leader of this movement. Folks are on this call. You continue to organize. Regardless of what happens, continue to organize, continue to bring people together. And anytime they overreach, use as an opportunity to grow the movement and keep on going. Nancy asks, the financial pressure and power of consumer boycotts, canceling media subscriptions, and boycotting their advertisers is proving to be our path to a general strike. How can we up the scale and persistence? Nancy, FCC, PR, Indivisible, in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first of all, we have got some ongoing and very successful consumer campaigns across the ecosystem that if you are not part of already, please be part of them, right? There has been an ongoing Target boycott since the beginning of the year that has had a huge impact on Target's positioning and sales. There is the Avelo Airlines campaign, which a bunch of Indivisible groups around the country, Siembra, North Carolina, folks got started up at the beginning of the year, and it has led to, among other things, Avelo significantly changing their like routes that they serve around the country because of all of the protesting that they've experienced for their role in ICE deportation flights. So there are active campaigns that we would encourage you to join. I also will say we agree that there needs to be kind of more and a deeper and more consistent consumer strategy that guides the next set of steps here. I think there's also some really hard analysis to be done about which companies are susceptible to which kinds of pressure here, right? Because there's a different set. I mean, and Ezra, you got at this with the Sinclair thing. There's a different set of tools, tactics. What is your ultimate goal when you talk about a company that is, mostly not public facing, doesn't have a brand it cares very much about protecting, and functionally is an ideological, part of the broader right-wing ideological project versus a company that is, has a beloved brand and lots of commercial properties and is more vulnerable to immediate consumer facing backlash. So squaring those things and bringing together that strategy, I agree, we agree, and also I think we gotta work it. We gotta do more on it.
Great, Nancy. Deborah asks, shouldn't we ask our senators to make redistricting a priority in the shutdown fight? Are all the Dems standing together? Deb with South County Resistance. So for folks who aren't fully plugged into the redistricting fight, Republicans have gone forward in Texas and they're trying to pull some shenanigans in Utah and in Missouri. There's scuttlebutt about Florida, but certainly Texas has already gone forward to steal a lot of seats. So they're trying to prevent any kind of blowback. California has moved most boldly forward in defense. Big credit to Gavin Newsom for actually picking the fight and then sticking to the fight. And now Proposition 50 is a live issue, something that people said was ridiculous because it would require a ballot initiative and they can't do it unilaterally, so we can't get it done. They're doing it. they're moving forward, and I am seeing Indivisible groups in California get really excited about this. There's a lot of energy here. We're going to be running campaign there to try to get Proposition 50 over the finish line, which will redistrict California in response to the gerrymandering we're seeing in other states. So I think that is a good fight. It is adjacent to the fight over the Republican shutdown, is what I would say. There's not really a demand on the table at the federal level to change what is happening with the gerrymandering. There was that demand back in 2021. Indivisible was one of the key leaders in the fight for democracy reform, which would have banned gerrymandering nationwide. I still support banning gerrymandering nationwide. If Republicans want to get on board with gerrymandering nationwide, I'm down. If California Republicans want to get on board with banning gerrymandering nationwide, I'm down with that. What I'm not down with is unilaterally disarming in a fight for our democracy. They are attacking, we should be pushing for it and using the power where we've got it. If you happen to live in Maryland, I think there is an opportunity there. And frankly, the governor has said some positive things and also not moved forward with anything. I think Maryland is a good example of a state that could be doing more. California is a good state example of a state that's doing basically everything they can. And we should be supporting those who are and pushing those who could be leaders who aren't yet. I'm seeing notes on Illinois needs to do it. I got to be honest. I'm happy to push JB Pritzker on this. We've done analysis. I think there's very little opportunity to pick up more seats in Illinois through this process. Illinois has already redistricted quite a bit in favor of the Democrats. It's, I think, the rare state that has done that. But there are other states. Maryland's top of the list. New York and New Jersey were on the list, but it just takes longer. So they're frankly not as good targets for this immediate fight, but they're good long-term fight targets. Sorry, Leah, anything else on that? Okay, you take this one. Any liberal think tanks working on Project 2029?
Oh boy. Okay, well, first, may I just have a point of personal privilege on this Project 2029 framing, because I do think we tend to use this as like shorthand for both a political campaign framework, like the thing we'll run on, and the actual blueprint for governing. And often when I hear people say it, and I don't know whether this is your thinking, but like often when I hear people say it, they're sort of like thinking about it as what we would run on in 2028, right? And I think it's worth noting, like Project 2025 was in fact wildly unpopular. It was one of a small number of things that successfully broke through in a really tough election year, that people did not like Project 2025. And to the extent that we had a problem, it was convincing people that the stuff that they did not like was actually going to happen. So just a gentle, friendly request that before we go forward, people use Project 2029 to talk about like the actual blueprint for governing rather than the like election thing, because it's not a comparably, it didn't help them win. It did help them govern. Now, in terms of this is
No,
my,
I think
this
that's
is my
accurate.
pet peeve.
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
But nonetheless, so like when we're talking about what are people going to run on, I think that's as much about who is running in primaries
Yes.
this year
Yes.
and what are they advancing as the vision of the party, who is running in primaries for the presidential, and what are the issues that they're spotlighting, what are the commitments they're making, what are the new ideas that they have. A lot of that is going to be worked out by some combination of people stepping forward and throwing their best shot at like the vision, and us deciding which ones we actually want to get behind. So that's kind of the campaign piece of this. Now, in terms of the actual policy blueprint, there are a bunch of think tanks that are working on different versions of this. I think that in general, I would say in general, it's not a place where I've personally wanted to dedicate a ton of time, in part because I think that the scope of the devastation that is happening to the federal government calls for something that's just totally different than the policy platform that we had heading into 2016 or 2020, right? It's not about tweaks at the margins or at the edges. It's about like a wholesale reconstruction of government to make it work for us, recognizing the massive capacity attack that has happened over the last 10 months. You want to take it from there? I feel like you followed the policy pieces of this more.
Yeah, I have. I agree with everything you said. That's always the case, obviously, with Leah. But particularly the case on this answer. I think there's a lot of focus on Project 2025 because it was so damn successful for them. But I do think maybe just to say, maybe I'm just saying what you said in different words, and I apologize if that's the case. The Project 2025 was not a success that was in a vacuum. Project 2025 was the end result of a multi-year, in some cases, multi-decade movement to move the Republican Party in the direction of right-wing authoritarianism. And with Project 2025, the stupid bastards were just stupid enough to put it on paper. And the stupid political press was stupid enough to believe them when they said, that's not real. But it wasn't like Project 2025 suddenly unlocked something. It was a reflection of a movement they had spent years building. So my mind goes to, I think what you were saying, Leah, which is if you want a Project 2029 that meets the moment, that is actually not just warmed over policy proposals from 2016 or 2020, but represents some kind of attempt to contend with the fact that we will have just survived a massive attack on American democracy, and we need to think, what does the social contract actually mean in this new post-Trump era? If you want that, you don't start with some think tank in DC talking about economic policy. You start building the movement that forces our leaders to meet voters where they are, which is we need something new. You need to actually rethink how politics is done. And that doesn't start behind closed doors, and it doesn't start with a presidential campaign in 2028. We do that now. There's a primary election season that we're headed into where we get to demand a kind of Democratic Party. And we can actually demand a party that reflects the Democratic Party of the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s, or we can demand something new. And from that, from those successes, will flow a Project 2029. We'll get it out of that. But if we fail to demand that over the course of the next 9 months or so of primary season, good luck. Tammy asks, does Indivisible at the national level actively connect with college and high school organizations, clubs, young Dems, social justice orgs, LGBTQ2+, climate, etc., to try to bring more young people into the democracy tent? I'm just going to try to shorten it. I think that the basic question is, how can we bring more young people out into the protest, which is not just a question we've got on here. It's a question when I talk to Indivisible groups who are disproportionately college educated and not in college or even recently graduated. It tends to be on the Gen X and Boomer and older millennial. Leah, we talk about this with Indivisible groups a lot. What are your top recommendations for folks? And this, I should call out, comes from Tammy with Indivisible Hoco County, Howard County, Maryland. Great Indivisible group. Thoughts on bringing more young people into the movement?
Well, let me just first answer the top question around kind of like, do we connect at the national level with like high school organizations, et cetera? The short answer is not a ton. We've definitely been in touch with and worked with youth organizations on kind of big core priorities like Sunrise Movement folks, et cetera. And also there's not necessarily like some of the things that you're mentioning, they're really like pretty bottom up in a way where there's not necessarily like as much central cohesive coordinating structures to like directly interact with. And I think this is an ongoing challenge that locals have identified, that we've identified collectively. And the best versions that I've heard around this are, there's no rocket science, but it's stuff like go to their events, try to reach out to people who might be friendly or interested or want to collaborate on something, try to find some common ground in spaces where you might want to do something together. Think about what resources you have available that might make partnership more enticing for young people. For example, do you have pizza at your meetings? I was going to say we young people. I'm not that young anymore. Whatever. We like free food anyways. Millennials.
I like childcare.
Do you have childcare at your meetings? That's right. If you're looking at millennials, or the ability for, someone to put their kids somewhere comfortable to hang out during that time. So just practical things like that. I also think it's really important to think about some of the like macro level ways in which generations are engaging with what is going on right now, and some of the framing that we can have that sometimes, if we're organizing and we're a largely older population, can turn off younger people. One really high level thing that I've talked about in the past that I think is just important for us to hold is that a lot of times I think we can approach things from kind of a preservationist lens of like, we're here to save our democracy. We're here to protect our institutions. We're trying to protect something about the existing system. And what we know about young people in general is they're pretty burnt out on the existing system. They do not have a lot of faith in either party, any institutions. They are not experiencing the system as delivering for them. So when it's framed in terms that it's kind of like, let's go back to the way things were, that tunes them out. And so I think it's really important, particularly when you're trying to build bridges with this stuff, to recognize that you're going to be mostly talking to people who are starting from like needing a reason to believe that this will be different, rather than
being moved by appeals to order. And the other thing that I think is particularly important to call out there when you're thinking about young people who've been on campuses for the last couple of years is there has been an incredibly active and engaged protest movement on campuses for the last couple of years. It is the anti-genocide movement. It is the folks who've been doing protests around the war, the conflict in Gaza, right? And those are folks who have been repressed really heavily. There are people who have been expelled from their institutions,
Yep,
blackballed from
yep,
jobs,
yep.
faced serious charges. And, obviously, we're all aware of Mahmoud Khalil, Romesa Ozturk, like people who have faced serious immigration consequences. And so I think it's really important to just be conscious that it's not like, oh, the young people haven't been showing up. It's like they've actually been, a lot of them, really involved in a cause in which they have seen both parties fail them. And so we've got to, if we want to pull folks in, we got to understand that that's part of the story that they're experiencing. And we've got to have a framework that says, no kings, no war, right? No kings, no killing. Like we got to actually help people see the causes that engage them in what we're doing.
Yep, right on, Leah. We've got Jeff from Indivisible, Oregon. Hey, Jeff. We've used pillars of support to explain how regimes lean on institutions, but it can feel static and doesn't capture the ongoing fight to reclaim them. I'd like to float an alternative metaphor, the tug of war against authoritarian breakthrough. In this frame, each rope is a major sector, labor, business, faith, media, etc. And while the wealthy few pull towards autocratic control, people can join together on the other side, finding their footing and eventually pull these institutions back towards serving life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do we see the usefulness of this tug of war framing alongside pillars of support? And maybe, just maybe, if this mic is good enough, you will pick up our 4-year-old just screaming his head off on the other side of this door. But I think probably his grandma is going to grab him in a sec. Speaking of tug of war, Leah, thoughts on Jeff's frame?
Gosh, yeah. I think this is the kind of place where people should be putting out ideas and seeing what resonates and gets organic uptake. Like just kind of candidly, one thing that I have learned over the years is to have some real humility about the extent to which I have the ability to recognize the thing that's going to land with other people when it comes to kind of an analytical concept or breakthrough. So if that works for you and if you're finding that it's getting traction with people, great, awesome. We got to try a bunch of different things to break through. And frankly, like the pillar stuff is like 201 stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
it's never going to be the way that I lead when I'm talking to an undecided voter. It's going to be part of the analytical framework that I'm offering to activists to help us understand how everything that we do connects together. So,
That's right.
like
That's
I
right.
guess what I would say is like I think it's good to have something that works and people hold, and like I'm down to see alternate versions, and I also have a lot of skepticism that I'm successfully able to recognize them in passing.
I will, I'm thinking of like the pillars of support. We've done a lot of trainings for this, and we had the national convening where we had people out. And I remember Andrew, our national advocacy director, he was presenting and he put up the slide, which had like the infographic of the pillars, and everybody took out their phone to take pictures of that because like an infographic actually goes a long way
Yeah.
in explaining a concept. But I think what you just said now really resonated with me, Leah, that this is kind of a 201 concept. And so, Jeff, what I'd be interested in, if y'all put some kind of infographic together that kind of illustrates that visual metaphor, and you think it's breaking through, let us know, send it to us, and I'm happy to see if like we can have it get traction. If it gets traction, great. And also, the main way most human beings are going to experience this work is, oh my God, what did they just do to Disney? That's fucked up. What can we do to fight back? Okay, I'll do that. And there's no conception of a pillars of support framework. They get mad at this institution in this moment and want to know what to do. Um, so I think both can work. It's just a matter of like
Yeah.
what helps us get people to 201 who we need to get to 201.
Yeah. The only other thing I will just note on this is like I think we need to have a class analysis here. I think we should be real clear that there's like a group of billionaires who are systematically working to rig the system in their own favor, and that is totally true. I also think that each pillar or each rope, whatever we're going to go with it, it's different, right? Like when we're looking at why have universities complied with Donald Trump, you actually have to have an analysis of like the university administrators, and you have to have analysis of like what is the role of the sports in this university, what is the role of donors, what is the role of the faculty and governance structures and whatever. And so it's not, I think it's like we should all have an understanding that there's like a relatively small number of wealthy people who are wrecking our country, and also we've also got to have a power analysis of every institution as we're campaigning and targeting it.
Yeah. Chelsea's following up with some of the conversation we had last week about the Supreme Court, and she notes that Chelsea was asking about reforms beyond expanding the branch, and we responded that our focus right now is living to fight another day, a phrase that we also use today. You can tell we use that a lot. But playing devil's advocate, I love this. We actually get to have like a real discussion. So I love that we're following up on this. Isn't the time to discuss and persuade Democrats to get on board with Supreme Court reforms exactly when the Supreme Court is doing horrific unconstitutional things? We all know how short Americans' collective memory is. And to me, part of the opposition party's job is to call out the injustices as it happens and also paint a picture of the alternative. Obviously, this question applies to so many things besides just the court, and I know that there are many individual Democrats out there who are or have been doing exactly this on other issues, but maybe I'm too hopeful for a real opposition party to take shape among the current party leadership. Love this question, love the back and forth, and appreciate people taking on devil's advocate positions and or actual positions you hold and pushing back. Okay, Leah, immediate thoughts on is now like when the Supreme Court is so thoroughly discrediting itself every single week with a new ruling in favor of the regime. Yes, we don't have power right now, but isn't this the time to bake in the reforms that are going to come once we do have power?
Yeah, so I would distinguish between the Supreme Court as an advocacy target, right? Like campaigns designed to make the Supreme Court do different things because you're specifically focusing on them, and using these moments as levers to get Democrats further, or using these moments as opportunities to move more Democrats into the posture that we're going to need them to hold. And I'm totally supportive of the second. Like, if you have got Democratic elected officials, this is absolutely a time to be talking to them about how do you expect anything to be different as long as we have this Supreme Court that has been captured by the MAGA faction. Why won't you sign on to the kind of reform agenda that's going to be necessary? I would caution about not getting too bogged down in like this reform versus that reform. I think one of the ways that I see things go awry is when we're having really ferocious arguments about different kinds of Supreme Court reform, as opposed to just trying to lock people into a commitment that it's necessary to have significant reform that rebalances the composition of the Supreme Court. But yeah, no, absolutely. Like Democrats who are feeling the heat around kind of how am I a fighter? Am I prepared to actually do what it takes to help protect people in this country? They should be being asked, how can you possibly be prepared? How can you possibly be fighting for democracy if you're not actually prepared to do the reforms that are going to be necessary to fix it?
I think there a couple things I'd note on that. Just as a former congressional staffer, we both were, and like here's a reality of how most congressional offices think. If there's not an actual action item attached to it, if there's not something immediately in front of them that they either will take a vote on or will co-sponsor a thing around or will be asked about, it's going to be in one ear and out the other. You're not going to get any action. So if you go to a member of Congress, even the most moderate, if you go to Chris Coons in Delaware and you're like, hey, Chris, you got to get on board. Like what the court is doing is terrible. He's going to say, the court is terrible. Trump is terrible. And then nothing's going to happen. Like he's not going to sign on any bill. He's not going to vote anyway. And like nothing's going to happen out of that. So when you're thinking about how are you going to pressure folks, the two options are either there is a piece of legislation that they can co-sponsor or not co-sponsor, and that's a verifiable thing, and it's a good piece of legislation that's put forward by a particularly strong pro-democracy advocate that does substantial reforms to the court. And you push them to co-sponsor that, and you can ask them, why the hell aren't you on this? That's a real decision point that you can put to them. And then the second thing that you can do is engage in the primaries and make this be a requirement for anybody getting your support in a primary. Are you on board with substantial reforms to the court? Oh, good, you are. What are they? What are they? Tell me what they are. It is actually not our job as American citizens and residents to say, here is the legislative text that we want you on. It is our job to make demands, and it is the legislator's job to figure out how to meet those demands in actual legislative reforms. And we can put that on them, but then it's their job to do that. So I am in favor of this. And Chelsea, part of this, honestly, is a capacity issue. If I had 1 million units of energy to spend, some portion of those 1 million units would be spent on this because I think it's important. In reality, we've got, I don't know, 12.5 units of energy to spend. And so we're trying to put on the largest protest in modern American history. We're trying to hold the Dems together in a shutdown fight against the Republicans. And we're trying to win the California proposition and the Virginia elections. And that's like taking up a lot of our capacity right now.
Yeah, real.
And there will be a time when we are pushing for this, but it doesn't rise above those other priorities in the immediate term. And New Jersey governor. Sorry, people said New Jersey governor and the New Jersey governor. Absolutely.
Do we want to close out with a specific amping folks up around what's going to be needed if we are in fact heading towards a shutdown? I'm
That's
sure,
right.
because I really want to make sure that we
Please
land
do.
that specific point.
Land that specific. Leah is now going to land us on that
Okay.
specific point.
Okay, so just to reiterate, Donald Trump is refusing to meet with Democrats. House Republicans have done the kind of negotiating equivalent of playing a game of chicken. You like throw your steering wheel out, they have left town. That means if Democrats are holding firm, then we are heading towards a shutdown. Nobody wants a shutdown. We want Democrats to fight for actual protections for people in our democracy. We also know Democrats, how would you describe Democrats in terms of their like nerves and fortitude?
I can't say that. There could be children on the call.
Okay, great. All right. So Democrats are going to need a lot of support and enthusiasm and people cheering them on to hold strong if we are in this position. So I really want people, I know we're working on No Kings. I know we are all doing our part, but I want us to think about how are they going to feel that energy? How are they going to feel that if they step out, there are people behind them who are going to be pushing along with them, who are going to be creating the momentum and energy as they fight for our healthcare, for our democracy. Are we gonna be there with them? Yes? Okay. I want everybody on this call thinking about how we're gonna be there collectively for them, whether that is phone calls, whether that is offices or showing up at their offices, whether that's reaching out to them in advance, letters, whatever it is. We want them to feel that energy.
And to help us make this argument to Dems, we are going to be following this up with a survey that we are going to then take the results to Capitol Hill. And so this survey asks you, what are you going to do if the Republicans drive us into shutdown? How will you show up in support of Dems who are holding firm? We will take your responses, we will collate them, and then we'll say, hey, this is what our folks are willing to do if you hold strong. Remember, we get the party that we demand. If you want the Dems to fight, demand it, and we'll get it. So that's what we need to show them we're going to demand, so then they actually show up for us.
That's right.
Okay, with that, that's the plan, Leah.
That's the plan.
Okay, we'll see y'all again next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Can't wait. Always a pleasure. Keep on fighting, y'all. We'll see you out in the streets.